Norman Hunter died 5 years ago, and the lies they told about this man being nothing but a gutless thug couldn't be further from the truth. When COVID-19 took the life of Leeds United's legendary defender in April 2020 at age 76, the football world didn't just lose a player. They lost a gentleman whose real story had been buried beneath decades of media manipulation and lazy storytelling. The outpouring of tributes that followed his death revealed something extraordinary. This wasn't mourning for some mindless enforcer. This was grief for a warrior who represented everything pure about football's golden age. Yet for 50 years, Norman Hunter had been painted as nothing more than a one-dimensional villain, a caricature that completely ignored the man behind the myth. The lies started with his nickname. Everyone knows Norman bites your legs, but here's what they don't tell you about how it really began. That famous phrase first appeared on a simple fan banner at the 1972 FA Cup final between Leeds and Arsenal at Wembley. It wasn't some media creation or marketing ploy. It was pure supporter culture, a piece of footballing folk art that captured the essence of their hero. But here's the twist that changes everything. The man who made that banner famous was Brian Clough, the television commentator covering the final for ITV. Clough remarked on the banner during the broadcast, giving it a national platform. This is the same Brian Clough who had spent years calling Leeds United dirty and cheating, the man who had a bitter rivalry with manager Don Ravy and the entire squad. By commenting on that banner, Clough, their biggest enemy, accidentally turned local supporter pride into a nationwide reputation. Think about that for a moment. The nickname that would define Hunter's legacy was amplified by the one person who hated everything he represented. It's like having your worst critic accidentally make you famous. Yet, instead of being bitter about it, Hunter embraced it as a badge of honour. The media loved the story because it was simple. Football in the 1960s and 70s was brutal, and every major club had their enforcer. Liverpool had Tommy Smith, known as the Anfield Iron. Chelsea had Ron Harris, called Chopper. Leeds had Norman Hunter. The tackling back then would be considered hair-raising by today's standards, but half a century ago, it was simply part of the game. Hunter wasn't some out-of-control maniac. He was Leeds' answer to an era where physical dominance was a tactical necessity. But the media painted him as just another thug because it made for better headlines than the complex truth. This brings us to the moment that sealed his reputation forever, and this is where the lies really took hold. If you've heard about Norman Hunter's fight with Francis Lee, you've probably heard the wrong version. The incident happened on November 1st, 1975, at Derby County's baseball ground, and it became one of the most famous brawls in football history. Here's what really happened. In the first half, Derby was awarded a penalty after Lee allegedly took a dive to fool the referee. Hunter was furious about what he saw as cheating. The tension boiled over in the second half when Hunter delivered a late tackle on Lee, who immediately retaliated. They exchanged punches, with Hunter landing a left hook that split Lee's lip and required stitches. Now here's where it gets interesting. Before we continue with the real story behind that fight and why it proves everything you thought you knew about Norman Hunter was wrong, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments which current Premier League defender reminds you most of Norman Hunter's style. Not the reputation, but the intelligence and positioning that made him truly great. The fight continued as both players walked off the pitch, only stopping when teammates intervened. Both were sent off, both were fined and banned. But here's what the media coverage missed entirely. The fight wasn't broadcast just once. It was replayed on Match of the Day to a national audience, turning a heated moment between two competitive players into a public scandal. The sensationalism of that coverage defined how people saw Hunter for the rest of his career. One incident, replayed endlessly, became his entire identity. It was spectacular television, but terrible journalism. The media took a complex player and reduced him to a single moment of violence, but his teammates knew better. His fellow professionals saw past the reputation to the player underneath. In 1974, Norman Hunter became the very first recipient of the PFA Players Player of the Year award. Think about what that means. This award isn't voted on by journalists or fans. It's chosen by the people who actually played against him, week after week. Hunter himself was surprised by the award. He knew his tough reputation, but he understood something the media didn't. If his only skill was tackling, his peers would never have voted for him. The award was proof proof that those who knew football best saw beyond the caricature to the complete defender, because that's what Hunter really was. He had a cultured left foot and exceptional ball control. His defensive mastery came from intelligence, not just aggression. He could read the game so well that he was always perfectly positioned, seeing danger before it developed. His fierce tackling wasn't mindless violence. It was a precise tool used to win the ball and immediately feed it to creative players like Billy Bremner and Johnny Giles. This brings us to the real secret behind Norman Hunter's success, and it completely destroys the narrative you've been told. He wasn't some loose cannon causing problems for his team. He was an essential element of Don Revie's tactical system at Leeds United. Revie was a master tactician who planned every detail. He created detailed dossiers on opposing teams, studying every player's strengths and weaknesses. His win-at-all-costs mentality and physical approach earned Leeds the nickname Dirty Leeds, but it was calculated, not chaotic. Within this system, Hunter's aggression wasn't a flaw to be managed. It was a weapon to be deployed. His uncompromising presence as centre-half made life easier for Leeds' creative players. He formed a legendary partnership with Jack Charlton that provided the defensive foundation for a decade of success. The numbers tell the story the media ignored. Hunter played 726 games for Leeds United over 14 years. You don't play that many matches by being a liability. He was part of championship-winning teams, FA Cup winners, and European competition success. He even earned 28 caps for England and was part of the 1966 World Cup winning squad, receiving his medal 41 years later when the rules were changed. Here's what makes the media lies even more insulting. Off the pitch, Norman Hunter was the complete opposite of his reputation. Teammates consistently described him as an absolute gentleman. John Giles, who played alongside him for years, said you could depend on Hunter with your life. He was humble, genuine, and modest. He would never talk about himself. The contrast was so stark that it became part of Leeds folklore. There's a famous story about a trainer being told that Hunter had a broken leg and responding with the question, "Whose is it?" Even his own medical staff knew that Hunter was more likely to break someone else's leg than his own. After retiring in 1982, Hunter spent 8 years as a manager, successfully raising Barnsley to the second division. Later, he became a beloved figure on local radio, covering Leeds United matches with the same intelligence he'd shown as a player. His legacy at Elland Road runs so deep that a banqueting suite bears his name. When Hunter passed away in April 2020, the tributes revealed the man the media had hidden for 50 years. He wasn't remembered as a thug or an enforcer. He was mourned as a mild-mannered, funny, compassionate gentleman who represented everything noble about football's golden age. His death marked the end of an era when football was at its rawest and most authentic. An era when courage, loyalty, and passion mattered more than social media followers and commercial deals. Norman Hunter embodied that spirit completely. The real tragedy isn't that Norman Hunter was misunderstood during his career. It's that an entire generation of football fans grew up believing the lies. They saw the nickname and the reputation without understanding the skill and character underneath. Hunter's story proves that football's greatest figures are often its most complex. He wasn't just a hard man or just a gentleman. He was both, and understanding that duality is essential to appreciating what made him special. The media wanted simple stories, but Norman Hunter was beautifully complicated. He was a master craftsman disguised as a street fighter, a tactical genius painted as a mindless thug, a gentle soul hiding behind a warrior's reputation. His legacy endures not because of the lies they told about him, but despite them. Norman Hunter was living proof that football's golden age produced players who were complete human beings, not just sporting caricatures. The beautiful game has always been both beautiful and brutal, and Norman Hunter understood that better than most. He played with the ferocity the era demanded while maintaining the dignity the game deserved. That's not the story of a mindless enforcer. That's the story of a footballing artist who happened to paint with his boots instead of brushes. Norman Hunter died 5 years ago, but the real man lives on in the memories of those who truly knew him. The lies can't touch that legacy.